It was 3 o'clock in the morning when my phone rang. I was still half asleep, the world around me muffled, distant. Then I heard her voice, the familiar tremble, breaking through a loud, chaotic backdrop of nightclub noise. Mom, Mom, please? I need you to send $3,000 right now. The words hit me like a cold wave. My card had been declined at the door. They wouldn't let us leave. For a moment, I just lay there in the dark, the phone pressed tightly against my ear as if that could steady the panic rising in her voice. And there it was, that familiar ache in my chest, the one that always seemed to find me whenever Rowan needed rescuing. I am 67 years old. My name is Marielle Garrison, and I've spent years trying to be the safety net for my daughter. I sat up, my bones stiff from sleep, but it was the fear in her voice that woke me completely. Rowan, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Where is Ethan? There was a long pause, too long. I could hear a faint thumping bass in the background, and then, with a shaky breath, she finally answered. He's not answering, Mom. They have our IDs. They're calling the police. Please, I need the money now. I could hear her breathing fast, uneven, like when she was a little girl, coming to me after making a mistake she couldn't fix. But this wasn't some scraped knee. This was my adult daughter, the one who insisted she could handle everything. Drowning in a life she refused to admit was beyond her. I swallowed. Rowan, I whispered, call your husband. There was silence and then a sharp, disbelieving breath from her. Mom, you can't do this right now. I closed my eyes, wishing, just for once, that I could soften, that I could pretend that helping her tonight wouldn't mean another crisis tomorrow. But wishing hadn't stopped the slow unraveling of the last few years. I love you, I whispered, choking on the words. But I am not sending the money. Before she could respond, I ended the call. I turned off the phone and laid it face down on the table beside me, the weight of my decision pressing down on my chest. The room was too still, but inside me everything hurt. I didn't know it then, but hours later I would get another call. This one would come from the Miami Beach Police Department, and it would shatter whatever illusions I still had about how far Rowan had fallen. I barely slept after that. By morning, I felt bruised, the tension of the night lingering in every part of me. When her text came through, just a curt, call me, I didn't reach for the phone immediately. I needed a moment to brace myself for whatever storm was coming next. There was a time I thought when Rowan would have come to my kitchen, sat at the counter and told me everything. Back then, she would paint for hours, let her hair grow wild, laugh at her terrible jokes. She never had to pretend, but those years seemed like another lifetime now. I watched as the distance between us grew. It came slowly at first, subtle enough that I tried not to see it. But the first real crack had shown just a few months after she met Ethan. We were having lunch at a cafe near my house. Rowan had just ordered a salad she didn't touch. I reached for the bill. Mom, don't, she snapped, grabbing the leather folder. People are watching. I blinked. Watching what? Her defensive tone softened immediately. Sorry, I'm just tired. But something in her eyes stayed with me long after the plates were cleared. Later, when I asked how she and Ethan were managing their expenses, she snapped again. We're fine, Mom. Stop worrying. Her voice was sharp, closed off. If I pressed, even gently, her walls went up. It was like revealing too much would shatter her, and that terrified me. It wasn't just the tone that changed. It was the excuses, the canceled plans, the things she forgot, the crazy work schedules. Each excuse got thinner than the one before. I could hear voices in the background, but they didn't sound like her friends. The laughter wasn't real, and when I asked who she was with, she muttered, just some friends. I tried to remind her of who she used to be, the girl who didn't hide behind a facade, the girl who loved to paint and laugh. But she just smiled that tight, practiced smile and said, Mom, I've grown up. Let it go. That was the moment I realized I didn't recognize the world she was trying to belong to, or the daughter she was becoming. And the distance between us only grew quieter, not smaller. I remember the first time I met Ethan at a small family dinner, the kind Rowan would have teased me for over-planning. He walked in, confident, in a perfectly pressed shirt, his watch glinting under the lights. He kept adjusting it, like he wanted to make sure everyone saw it. He shook my hand and said, "Rowan tells me you're the calm one in the family. We could use that." It sounded like a compliment, but it wasn't. Weeks later, when I visited their apartment, Rowan hovered behind him like a shadow. He gave me a tour of furniture he called investment pieces. She smiled too hard, like she was asking me to approve of a life that didn't quite fit her. At dinner that night, Ethan said lightly, "Everyone in my circle looks sharp. It's just how things are. Rowan's getting there." Rowan lowered her eyes, like the words had landed somewhere tender, and I felt it, an invisible rope tugging her toward expectations that weren't hers. It wasn't long before I overheard him tell her, "Don't bring that bag. Everyone notices." Rowan muttered, "I can't afford a new one." Ethan sighed, annoyed. "Figured out. It matters." That was when I realized, in his world, image wasn't a choice. It was currency. And Rowan, desperate to keep up, was spending everything she had and more, just to keep the appearance of it all together. Still, when things started cracking, when the night of her 3 a.m. call came, she didn't call him. She called me. It started small, the cracks. Photos on Rowan's Instagram, showing a life that didn't match the one she told me she was living. A rooftop bar here, a glass of champagne there. The captions always spoke of working hard and playing harder, but the job she had didn't pay enough to afford that kind of lifestyle. I called her the next morning. "You were out late." She laughed too quickly. "Just a girl's night. Nothing crazy." But it wasn't just one picture. Soon, there were photos of designer shopping bags, fancy dinners. When I asked how she was affording it, she snapped, "You don't understand how things work now." I tried again a week later, when she showed up wearing a coat I knew was worth more than her monthly rent. "Rowan, that coat." She cut me off. "It's a gift." "From who?" "Just someone. Don't make a thing out of it." She didn't even look at me. Not really. And when her friends came over, I could see her watching them, grading herself against their clothes, their confidence. Once, after they left, she snapped at me. "I'm not a child, Mom." "I never said you were," I replied, "but you look at me like I'm failing." Her voice cracked, and she turned away. That night, she deleted photos, the ones where she was happy, the ones where she was just herself, no filters, no posing. The daughter I knew started to fade, replaced by a version of her that only existed online. As the distance between us grew, I watched her try to keep up with a life she couldn't afford, a life that wasn't hers. And then, one afternoon, she told me about a trip. "Mom, the girls and I are going to Miami next month. It's a one-time thing. I deserve it." I set down my mug, my heart tightening. "How much is it going to cost?" She waved me off, "Not that much. Maybe $3,000 for if we do the yacht rental." My chest tightened. "Rowan, you can't afford that." She straightened. "Everyone else is going. I can't be the only one who stays home. It's embarrassing." I shook my head. "I'm not paying for it." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't say you had to. I was hoping you'd support me this once." I could feel the weight of her frustration, but I stood my ground. "You're not living within your means," I said softly. And then it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for the money. I was fighting for her to see the truth, for her to realize she couldn't keep pretending. But that truth, I knew, wasn't going to be easy for either of us. The trip to Miami came, and as expected, her posts began flooding in. First-class seats, matching outfits with her friends, champagne in the airport lounge. The pictures looked straight out of a magazine, but I couldn't help but feel the knot tightening in my chest. It wasn't just the money, it was everything behind those images, the perfect life she was pretending to live. The second day, her post showed her lounging at a luxury resort, a drink in hand, the sun casting a golden glow over everything. Someone filmed her stepping off a rented yacht, her smile so wide, but it didn't reach her eyes. I sent her a short text. Be careful. Don't overspend. She didn't respond. By the third day, I saw more, the bottle service at a rooftop club, flashing lights across her face. But the smile she wore wasn't real. It was the same fake smile I'd seen her wear so many times before. And somewhere deep inside, I felt it. That cold certainty that she wasn't celebrating. She was running from something, from everything she had buried inside. That night, I didn't even wait for her to call me. I knew I had to call her first. "Rowan, this isn't what you told me," I said softly, my voice catching. She sighed a sharp exhale. "Mom, stop. Everything's covered. Just let me have fun." But there was something in her voice, a tremor, barely noticeable, but there, like she was teetering on the edge of something she didn't want to face. Something that felt too big to carry. "Be careful," I said again, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. "Don't let this go too far." She didn't answer. The next morning, the text came, "Call me." I didn't rush to pick up the phone. My heart already knew what was coming. The phone vibrated against the table as I stared at it, half expecting a disaster to unfold on the other side. When I did pick up, her voice was frantic. "Mom, please. You have to help me. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my own heart, trying not to let her fear swallow me whole. "What's going on, Rowan?" "The police, they're here. They took Ethan. They said we owe them. I don't know how much, but it's a lot. I don't know what to do." My heart sank. "Where is Ethan now?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. "I don't know. They arrested him. She choked on her words, unable to finish the sentence. "I need you to send the money, Mom. Please. I don't know who else to turn to." The ache in my chest grew, a dull throb of helplessness. She was in so deep, and part of me knew, deep down, that no amount of money, no phone call, no rescue was going to fix this. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every word I was about to say. "Rowan," I said gently, trying to steady myself as much as her. "I can't keep bailing you out. You have to face this on your own." Her voice cracked. "Mom, please, I'm scared." I wanted to scream at her, to shake her and tell her that she didn't have to keep pretending, that she didn't have to keep running. But instead, I whispered, "I love you, but I'm not sending the money." There was a long pause before she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I've messed everything up." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let the silence stretch between us, feeling the weight of her words settle over both of us. When I finally spoke, my voice was barely audible. "You can fix it, Rowan, but you have to stop running. You have to stop pretending." She didn't respond. The phone line went dead, and I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart heavy in my chest. I didn't know what to do anymore. My daughter was unraveling, and all I could do was watch. But there was one more call coming. And this one would change everything. The days after that call were a blur. Rowan's texts and missed calls piled up, but I couldn't bring myself to answer them. Every buzz of the phone was like a weight on my chest. I had said my piece. I had made my decision. But it felt like a small piece of my heart was breaking with every unanswered message. Finally, the phone rang again. I looked at the unfamiliar number on the screen, my stomach turning in knots. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something stopped me. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was fear. "Ms. Garrison," a man's voice said. "This is Sergeant Alvarez with the Miami Beach Police Department." My heart sank. I closed my eyes, bracing for the news I knew was coming. "Sergeant Alvarez," I said, my voice unsteady. "What happened?" "We have your daughter, Rowan Garrison, in custody," he said, his tone formal but not unkind. "She was detained last night after she and several others tried to leave a nightclub without paying an $8,000 bill." My breath hitched. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "When officers intervened," he continued, "she became disorderly. She was arrested and spent the night in jail, but she's cooperative now. She specifically asked that we call you. I sat frozen, my hand shaking as I gripped the edge of the table. Is she okay? I asked, barely able to whisper. She's fine, the sergeant said. No injuries. She's been held overnight, and once her bail is posted, she can be released. I could hear a faint, desperate voice in the background. It was Rowan. Mom, please answer. Please don't leave me like this. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the weight of her plea, the raw emotion in her voice cutting through me. But I couldn't let myself fall into the trap of rescuing her again. I had to let her face the consequences of her actions. How much is the bail? I asked, my voice shaking. It's $1,000, he replied. Once posted, she can be released. However, the nightclub is also pursuing restitution for the bill. The knot in my stomach tightened as the realization hit me. This wasn't just another financial problem. This was bigger. This was a sign that Rowan's life had spun so far out of control. She couldn't even find a way back. I took a deep breath. I'm not posting bail, I said, the words heavy in the air. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Ma'am, the sergeant finally said. She specifically asked for you. She's very distressed. I know, I whispered, my voice barely audible. But she has a husband, and in-laws. She needs to call them. The sergeant didn't answer right away. She insisted you would help. I closed my eyes. I've helped too many times. She has to learn. I can't keep bailing her out. There was another silence, the kind that stretched too long, full of words that remained unsaid. Then, softly, the sergeant spoke again. I understand, ma'am. I'll inform her. Before he hung up, I heard Rowan again. Her voice was frantic, breaking with emotion. Mom, don't do this to me. Please don't leave me here. I can't do this alone. Please, I need you. The line went dead. I stayed at the table, feeling like I was suffocating under the weight of my decision. I knew it was the right one. I had to make her stand on her own. But it didn't stop the ache in my chest. It didn't stop the guilt from creeping in, telling me that I wasn't being a good mother, that I was abandoning her in her time of need. But I wasn't abandoning her. I was stepping back, letting her face the consequences of her choices, letting her find her own way back. If I kept rescuing her, she would never learn how to fix things herself. The next call came that evening. Ethan's mother. Marielle, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk. I knew what was coming. I braced myself. About Rowan? I asked, my throat dry. Yes, she replied. She's here with us. But there's more you don't know. I sat up straighter, every nerve in my body on high alert. What do you mean? Ethan's father came on the line then, his voice grim. Your daughter owes over $70,000 in credit card debt. Possibly more. We've been trying to help her get organized, but she keeps opening new accounts. I felt like the floor had dropped out from beneath me. 70,000. I whispered. Yes, he said, his voice clipped. And that trip to Miami? At least $15,000 more. She told Ethan that you've taken care of some bills in the past, so we thought you'd help with this too. I cut him off. I haven't helped her like this, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Not like this. There was a pause, heavy and thick, before Ethan's mother spoke again. She's terrified you'll find out, Marielle. She's hiding everything. It was like a punch to the gut. I had known something was off. I just hadn't known how bad it had gotten. An hour later, Rowan showed up at my door, her eyes swollen, her hair tangled. She stepped inside without waiting for me to invite her. Mom, I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice cracking. Please don't shut me out. I handed her a glass of water. She gripped it with trembling hands. I never meant for it to get this bad, she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. I kept thinking I'd fix it. I'd get a better job. I'd make more money. I'd catch up. But every time I fell behind, I panicked. And then I spent more to make it look like I wasn't falling apart. The tears started to fall then. and I could see it, the weight of everything crashing down on her. The guilt, the shame, the fear of being judged. "You were afraid of being judged," I said softly, my heart aching for her. She nodded, her shoulders shaking. Everyone around me, Ethan's friends, his family, they all looked perfect. I didn't want to be the odd one out. I reached out and gently took her hand. "And so you tried to buy belonging." She sobbed, her face buried in her hands. "Mom, please. I'm begging you. Don't give up on me." I pulled her into my arms, holding her like I hadn't since she was a child. "I'll never give up on you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "But I can't rescue you from this. You have to face it. You have to fix it yourself." Her shoulders shook harder, and I felt the weight of every tear that fell. "I'm scared, Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know," I said softly, "but that fear is the beginning of change." And for the first time in years, I saw my daughter, not the version she had been pretending to be, but the one underneath, the one who was hurting, the one who was finally starting to face the truth. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy for either of us, but it was the only way forward, and neither of us was backing down anymore. The days that followed felt like the slow unraveling of years of pretending, of hiding behind the perfect images, the designer bags, the social media posts that screamed of a life she couldn't afford. Rowan started taking small steps toward facing the truth. It wasn't easy for either of us. The walls that had grown between us felt too high to climb, but every day we chipped away at them. Little by little, she started counseling. It wasn't much at first, just a few sessions, sitting in a small room, trying to make sense of everything that had led her here. I could see the struggle in her eyes, the fear of facing the truth, the weight of everything she had buried. But there was something else too, a flicker of hope, as if she was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could get back to who she used to be. One afternoon, she showed up at my door with a bag in her hand. It was full of clothes, expensive things, the kind of clothes she had once clung to like they were the only thing keeping her afloat. She stood there for a moment, her hands trembling as she held the bag out to me. "I'm selling these," she said quietly. "I don't need to look expensive anymore." I took the bag from her, my heart heavy with the realization of how much she had changed. The girl who once couldn't care less about material things was finally letting go of the armor she had been hiding behind. "How does it feel?" I asked softly, looking at her face. She smiled, but it was different this time. It was real, like I'm peeling off someone else's skin. I nodded, understanding. For the first time in years, Rowan wasn't pretending, and neither was I. She started coming by more often, not dressed in designer clothes, not with a face full of makeup, but just herself. Her hair tied back, no performance. We would sit at the kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing, the kind of conversations we used to have when she was a child. She wasn't afraid to show me the cracks anymore. One evening, she sat across from me, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. Her eyes were tired, but there was a strength in them now, a quiet, steady strength. "Mom," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I spent so long trying to be the version of myself that Ethan's world expected. I didn't realize that I was disappearing in the process." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. She had been lost for so long, but now she was finding herself again. "I saw you slipping," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I just didn't know how to stop it." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. "I didn't want you to. If you saw the real mess, you'd be disappointed." I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "I was never disappointed in you. I was scared of how hard you were pushing yourself." She let out a shaky breath, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I'm trying, Mom. I really am." I pulled her into my arms, holding her like I hadn't in so long. "I know, honey, and trying is where everything begins." The weeks that followed weren't perfect. Rebuilding a life, rebuilding trust, rebuilding ourselves isn't something that happens overnight. It's slow, uneven, painful, but it was real. And for the first time in years, it felt like we were both living in the truth, no more pretending. Rowan started taking small steps to get her life back on track. She met with a financial advisor, started paying off her debts, and boxed up the clothes that had defined her life for so long. It wasn't easy. The temptation to slip back into old habits was always there, lingering at the edges of her consciousness. But each day she fought it. One evening, she sat beside me on the bench in the garden, rubbing her hands together the way she always did when she was deep in thought. "I paid off another card today," she said quietly, a small but significant smile on her face. "It's not much, but it's something." I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman she was becoming, steady and strong in a way that had been missing for so long. "It's yours," I said, my voice full of pride. "You earn every bit of it." She nodded, her eyes bright with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. "Ethan started therapy," she said, her voice quiet. "He says he doesn't want the life we were pretending to live." I didn't know what that meant for them, for their future, but I didn't need to. She was finally seeing things clearly, and that was enough for now. "You don't have to know today," I said, squeezing her hand. "One honest step at a time is enough." She exhaled slowly, like she was releasing all the weight she had been carrying for so long. "Mom," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I used to think love meant covering up every mistake, fixing everything so no one saw the cracks." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years I saw the woman she was becoming, softer, steadier, no longer trying to live a lie. "Love is letting someone stand," I said, my voice full of quiet certainty. She reached for my hand, and this time there was no fear in her grip. "Not standing for them," I said softly, "but standing with them." She held my hand tightly, and I knew, deep down, that this was the turning point. We had both stopped running. "Thank you for not saving me," she whispered, her voice full of gratitude. "It's strange, but it's the first time I feel like I can save myself." A quiet settled between us, not heavy, not suffocating, just full. Full of truth, of understanding, of the unspoken bond that had always been there, even when it seemed like we were worlds apart. It wasn't easy, but neither of us was backing down anymore. Together, we were rebuilding. Together, we were finding a way forward. And this was just the beginning. Rowan moved into a small rental on the east side, nothing fancy, nothing staged for social media. Just a modest little space with peeling paint and creaky floors. But when she first showed it to me, her voice trembled with something I hadn't heard from her in years. Pride. "It's not much," she said, laughing nervously as she pushed open the door. "But it's mine, and I can actually afford it." I felt warmth rise in my chest, a soft ache, almost like a quiet awe escaping without sound. "It's more than enough," I said, and I meant it. In the weeks that followed, she continued therapy, met with her financial advisor regularly, and slowly began sorting through the mountain of debt she'd accumulated. It was overwhelming. Some nights she'd call me with her voice shaking, whispering that she felt like she was drowning again. Other nights, she'd show up at my house with a stack of paperwork and sit silently at the table, her eyes red from weeping. But every time she stayed. She faced it. She didn't run. And I stood with her, not in front of her, not shielding her, just beside her. One afternoon, she arrived with another bag in her arms. More designer clothes she once clung to like lifelines. She set them down and let out a small, shaky laugh. "It's weird," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "But I don't want these anymore. I don't want to be that version of myself." "How does it feel?" I asked, letting all of this go. She sighed, her shoulders dropping with relief. "Like I'm finally breathing," she said, her voice soft. "Like I spent so long drowning in someone else's expectations, and for the first time, I'm swimming toward something real." We hugged, a long, lingering hug that felt like a piece of our old bond stitching itself back together. One evening, we sat across from each other at my kitchen table. Nothing fancy, no extravagant settings, No noise except the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Rowan's fingers wrapped around a mug she wasn't sipping, her gaze lingering on the steam rising from it. "Mom," she whispered, "I spent so long being terrified of disappointing everyone. Ethan, his family, my friend, you. I kept trying to build this perfect version of myself, and I think I forgot who I actually was." My throat tightened. "I never needed you to be perfect," I said softly. "I just needed you to be honest. With me. With yourself." She wiped at her eyes, laughing through tears. "It's embarrassing how hard I tried to hide everything." "It's human," I said. She reached for my hand, the smallest, most fragile smile on her lips. "I'm trying, Mom. I really am." "I know," I whispered. "Trying is where everything begins." Weeks later, she sat beside me on a bench outside, knees pulled close, rubbing her hands together. Her eyes were softer now, clearer, lighter. "I paid off another card," she said quietly, almost shyly. "It's small, but it's something." "It's yours," I replied. "You earned every bit of it." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "Ethan started therapy. He says he doesn't want the life we were pretending to live anymore. I don't know what that means for us." "You don't have to know today," I said. "One honest step at a time is enough." She inhaled slowly, letting it out just as softly. Then she whispered, "I used to think love meant fixing everything, hiding every crack, making things look perfect." I turned to her, seeing not the girl who used to hide behind filters and expensive clothes, but a woman finally ready to meet her own life head-on. "Love," I said gently, "is letting someone stand, not standing for them." Her fingers intertwined with mine, steady and warm. "Thank you for not saving me," she whispered, voice breaking into a heartfelt, trembling laugh. "It's the first time I've ever felt like I can save myself." The quiet that settled between us wasn't heavy the way it used to be. It wasn't full of fear or distance. It was full of something else entirely, something like healing. And as the days continued, Rowan's life shifted, not with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but with small, real moments, honest conversations, tearful nights, brave mornings, and slowly, beautifully, she rebuilt herself. And somewhere in the middle of that journey, something changed for me too. I stopped feeling like I needed to hold her together. I realized she was learning to hold herself. Piece by piece, truth by truth. Halfway through one of our long talks, she looked up at me with eyes steady and hopeful. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Her voice trembled as she continued, "I'm not perfect, Mom. I'm still scared. I still make mistakes." "Good," I said softly. "Mistakes mean you're living." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her, gently, lovingly.